This is Matthew Cratter from Trader University, and today I want to talk about the Coinbase IPO and whether Coin is a good investment. I should say from the outset, this is not technically an IPO, though the shares will be coming public today. It's what's called a direct listing, where the company basically lists shares without raising any additional capital. The advantage of this is it doesn't, you pay fewer fees to Wall Street and you avoid the IPO pop, where early investors, institutional investors get a better price than everyone else, and the company ends up raising less money. So this is a direct listing. It's very similar to what Palantir and Roblox did earlier this year and last year. We had a sneak peek into Coinbase's financials for the first quarter. They released them. Q1 revenue, 1.8 billion. Q1 net income, 800 million. I'm going to use these numbers to give you an idea of where I think it's going to start trading. Net margin, really high net income margin of 44%, if those numbers are correct. If I put all this together and I assume zero growth for 2021, obviously the company's going to grow a lot, but let's just say that they do a run rate of 1.8 billion every quarter for 4 quarters. That's 7.2 billion in revenues for 2021. We slap a 20x 20 times sales, 20x revenue on there. We end up with a market cap of roughly 144 billion. If you take a look at how many outstanding shares, approximately 266 million, that gives us an opening price of about $541 per share. You may have seen this 250 number bandied about in the press. This is what's called an indication or indicative offer. It's usually way below where the shares will actually start trading. And as far as I can tell, it really is more of a formality. I fully expect Coinbase to start, when it opens, to be trading in the 500s. If you're finding this video helpful at this point, please hit that subscribe and like button, and maybe share the video with a couple of your friends who are interested in Bitcoin, crypto, or Coinbase. Here's the article where I got the indicative price run from 250 and the number of shares outstanding. But as I said, I'm almost certain we're going to see it trading in the 500s where it opens up. Now, what do I think of Coinbase? Many of you know that I do use them to buy my Bitcoin sometimes. Obviously, terrible customer support. Once you get set up, I never use customer support. I haven't used it for a number of years, but I hear from many of you, terrible customer support. I like Coinbase Pro, which you get free with opening up a Coinbase account. You just go to a different URL there, and you can get much lower fees and commissions. Another problem with Coinbase and Coinbase Pro, it crashes more often than any other brokerage I've ever dealt with. And then if you have any problems, there's really no one to talk to. So these are the downsides. I'm not a huge fan of the company, and yet, ironically, I still use them along with Kraken and Gemini and a few other companies. I use them just because they have very low fees, which means you end up getting more Bitcoin. If you pay a 1% fee, like you might do with a Cash App, or a 1.25% fee, you end up with less Bitcoin at the end if you're exchanging fiat for Bitcoin than if you were paying a commission of, I believe Coinbase right now is about 0.2%, so I'm paying 20. It's something like 20 or 30 basis points. The fees are very low, so you don't even really pay attention to them. I don't think it matters. Once you're set up, you can use Coinbase, you can use another company. It doesn't really matter if you're stacking sats, if you're buying Bitcoin and withdrawing it off the exchange to hold on a hardware wallet. It almost doesn't matter where you buy it. And so Coinbase has a very interesting business. They're a little bit like a toll road. You have to, at least in the current environment, you have to go through one of these exchanges to buy Bitcoin, unless, of course, you provide some good or service to someone and they pay you in Bitcoin, which would be another way to acquire it. One nice thing about Coinbase going down during panics is that people who have very weak hands might not sell their Bitcoin or other crypto. Another point I wanted to make briefly before moving on, lots of people in my comments still saying the U.S. government's going to ban Bitcoin. Very, very unlikely. What are they going to do? Tell Coinbase it can't trade Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies anymore. More as every day passes and we have more and more Bitcoin billionaires. Obviously, Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase, is a billionaire. As more and more really wealthy people, and even senators and other politicians own Bitcoin, this becomes increasingly likely. And you really have to have a lot of cognitive dissonance to believe that we're going to see that one IPO after another, like Coinbase, and yet somehow magically Bitcoin is going to be banned in the next couple of years. This is just not going to happen. It's a fake fear. I think one interesting way of framing the Coinbase IPO is to think of it in terms of famous previous IPOs that really kicked off new eras. We had the era of modern software with Microsoft going public in 1986. Netscape was really the big one that everyone always looks back on as having started the dot-com revolution and really brought Silicon Valley into its own in the modern internet age and really moved it away from hardware. Google obviously was the big IPO after the dot-com crash and sort of came around to show people that there's still a business, that money could be made with the internet. It's hard to believe, but in 2002, lots of people saying the internet was finished and that there was no money to be made, paradoxically. Same way people are talking about Bitcoin now, saying all the money's been made and it's a bubble and it's going to crash. I've seen this movie many times and it's just not true. Facebook IPO kicked off the modern era of social networks, social media, etc. And now we have Coinbase in 2021, really putting crypto and Bitcoin at the center of everyone's attention. This will be on the nightly news for those people who still watch the nightly news. And it really draws a lot of attention to the sector, especially to Bitcoin, which is really the crypto asset that Coinbase has used. This is where most of its trading revenues comes from, along with Ethereum. And really, Coinbase owes everything to Bitcoin. And the name Coinbase obviously comes from Bitcoin as well. Now, an IPO gives a lot of people liquidity. They can sell their shares more easily, and they can use that money as is traditional. For example, in Silicon Valley, people make a lot of money at an IPO, then they become an angel investor, or they start a VC fund like Mark Andreessen did after the many years after the Netscape IPO, and then they use this liquidity. They use this newly earned cash to start new companies in the space. And in this case, it would be other Bitcoin companies or cryptocurrency companies. The really smart founders and investors will also use a large chunk of their proceeds to buy Bitcoin as well. It's important to remember that Coinbase has been over the years an enemy of Bitcoin, in my opinion. They banded together along with Grayscale and Bitmain and a bunch of other large companies to try to force through the SegWit 2x update on everyone. This was an update that would increase the block size of Bitcoin in 2017, and they were really defeated by the little guys, by the guys who run full nodes, and by the Bitcoin community. This was very significant, but really does show Coinbase has no special loyalty to Bitcoin. I could imagine an alternate history in which Brian Armstrong wasn't interested in setting up an altcoin casino as he has, but really was a strong proponent of Bitcoin. And since most of their revenues come from Bitcoin trading and investing, people buying Bitcoin on their exchange, anyway, this could have still been a really good business without all the moral compromises that came along with it. I mean, listing securities like XRP on Coinbase, it's been delisted since then, but it's just absolutely immoral. So I'm not a fan of Coinbase. I'm not a fan of Brian Armstrong, and I think it's important to remember this history, this SegWit, these block size wars, the hard fork wars as they're called, almost ended up destroying Bitcoin, and Coinbase was one of the really big guys on the wrong side of history. So I didn't go into this too much. I'll link here to the Wikipedia article on SegWit 2x, as well as the New York agreement, where all these companies got together and tried to force this upgrade on everyone. Coinbase obviously had to back down eventually and put out say they weren't going to go along with SegWit 2x. Other problem, the really embarrassing thing too, that I'm embarrassed for Coinbase. You take a look at a company like MicroStrategy, not a very large company in tech terms, just $8 billion market cap. How many Bitcoin do they own on their balance sheet? 91,000 approximately Bitcoin. Tesla, not even in the crypto space, obviously owns 48,000. And then you come down here to Coinbase. We still don't know what the market cap is going to be, though we know roughly where it's going to start trading. They only have 4,487 Bitcoin. There are a lot of individuals who have more Bitcoin than this, a lot of whales, etc. So this shows you, this really shows you that Brian Armstrong doesn't really get Bitcoin. This company could have been valued so much more if they had reinvested their cash in Bitcoin, even more than reinvesting it in growing operations. So you can look at what people say, that they're big supporters of Bitcoin, but then you look what they do with their own money, and you can really see, you can see how they think. For this reason, I have no interest, absolutely no interest in owning this company. And we'll reach a point where I'll be basically done buying Bitcoin, and I won't even use their services ever again, because I'm never gonna sell my Bitcoin as well. And we might talk about that tomorrow, some of the intricacies having to do with Bitcoin loans. So make sure you subscribe and stay tuned for that. Let's say Coinbase comes out, what did we say, $150 billion company. Let's say it becomes like one of the FANG stocks. It becomes $1 trillion company. I don't see quite that upside, that much upside, though it's theoretically possible if they become a full services crypto company. And I hate that term, crypto company, but that's sort of how they're branding it themselves. If they become a $1 trillion company, it's a roughly 6x from where they might start trading. I think I have 590 here. I don't think my numbers completely agree. 540, 590, something like that. It's approximately 6x, maybe a little more than 6x up from here. Whereas if you were to buy Bitcoin, if you're thinking about buying the Coinbase IPO today or the direct listing, and Coinbase goes to $1 trillion, you'll make 6 times your money. If you take that same money and buy Bitcoin at roughly 64,000, where it's trading today, again at new all-time highs, and Bitcoin hits $1 million, which I think there's a reasonable chance it happens even next year in 2022, certainly by 2024, which is about how long it would take, or maybe take even a little longer for Coinbase to grow to $1 trillion market cap. If Bitcoin gets to $1 million at the same time that Coinbase gets to $1 trillion, you still make a lot more money holding your Bitcoin. And there's not the same operational risk. There's not the risk of Coinbase getting hacked, for example, and what that would do to their image and their security. And so this is one reason I much rather own Bitcoin over Coinbase. Here's a 15x return, 16x return. I actually think Bitcoin by the end of the decade is going to be closer to 10 million. So you can add a zero to that. You can add 150x versus 6x. Bitcoin is a very special asset. Coinbase can always issue more shares. They can dilute their shareholders as well. Bitcoin, there's just 21 million, and many of those have been lost. And so the actual scarcity, when you really think about it, think about how many people are in California, how many people are in the US, how many people are in the world, and all these numbers pale in comparison to the number of Bitcoin, which is just 21 million Bitcoin. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit that subscribe and like button. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below, and whether you'll be buying the Coinbase direct listing. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.